everybody, Eric here. Well, I've got a 1997 BMW 328 IS, and I would like to show you why your steering column locks up while you're driving or while you are parked, can't get your key to turn properly, or you gotta jimmy the wheel just to get it going. So basically the problem is the housing that the steering lock sits in. Mine broke, and I'm going to show you how to get it out and where it's at. Okay, here we go. First you have to take that lower cover off your steering column, and well, as you can see, I've started with the knee bolster and all those panels. Carefully remove your airbag and with the Torx 30 tip, and carefully disconnect your horn and your airbag connector. And next we're going to be removing the steering wheel with a 16mm socket. After the bolt is removed, make sure you put a mark on the steering wheel or the steering shaft with the steering wheel notch right there, so when you pull it off, put it back on, it'll line up perfectly and you won't have any problems with your airbag slip ring. Now that the steering wheel is removed, we have access to all the rest of the things we need to pull off. Like we need to get our bushings, and there's a slip ring inside there, and we'll need to get our switches off of there, and we'll get right to that. Here we go. Our switch assembly is removed and our upper cover is off, so we have complete and full access to our switch housing. Now, last thing I'm going to have to do, I have to pull the sensor ring off of the key tumbler set there, and also these are the shear bolts. They look like rivets, but no, guess what? They're bolts. Well, what I used a line-up punch or a pin punch, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to use. And what I had to do is I had to get on top of it, hit it with a hammer, and turn the bolt. Worked really good. It only took probably about 3 hours. No, I'm just kidding. It took about 5 minutes maybe to pull the bolt. But either way, works like a champ. Alright, so oh, one last thing, almost forgot. You need to use this pair of snap ring pliers to get this snap ring for this bushing, and then we can get the bearing out, and then we'll be able to work on those bolts. Alright, and since I think it'll be a little bit easier to get the harness, the combination switch harness out of here without being, you know, on the ground, and we got a nice sturdy base, you're going to use, okay, where is it? There it is. Use a jeweler screwdriver to get up in there, and there's two screws right there after you chew off the factory anti-tamper paint there. And also, I've also removed the connector from the main harness on the steering wheel, just to make things easier while I'm here. Alright, before we can go any further, we have to get the automatic shift lever cable off of here using a 13mm end wrench. Go ahead and unscrew it. Here we go. Now with the bolts, those shear bolts removed and everything else out of the way, as you see, all we have to do is slide this sleeve back and everything should pull right out. And as you can see, I've already removed from a previous install and remove to figure out what the cause is. I've already removed that locking block, and I'll show you what that is here in a second on the brand new part. Now, all I have to do is switch over the electrical harness little routing tube there and the tumbler set over to the new assembly, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, one little point I want to make is before you put everything back together and get confused or whatever, make sure you transfer all your hardware over, like your set screws right here, or I think they call them grub screws for the combination switch electrics, and also your bearing. And one little point is that if you're having a hard time getting that out, use your screwdriver and go from the back side with its very simple plastic race for the steering wheel upper bearing. And also I just have to replace, or I should say transfer over the tumbler. And that's a totally different video you can find on YouTube. There's a lot of those out there, because there's a common problem that your actual key itself, your tumbler will fail, and the actual key itself will just spin. So one thing I'd like to also point out, that the actual locking block right here, the silver piece, is what actually was catching the steering wheel and not letting me allow the steering wheel to turn. And the actual reason was because underneath this this block piece here, there's an elevator down there, and that that block right there is attached to it. And as you might be able to see right here, it attaches here and here on this little item here, and it just simply broke. So aluminum, failed. Alright, so that's the reason why you won't be able to turn your steering wheel, or turn your key or whatever when you have an older BMW and you have some steering wheel problems. Okay, here we go. Let's transfer over the lock cylinder into the new housing, utilizing the BMW reverse engineered tool, hair clip. Slide it into your tumbler there at the point where you want to be in line with this line right here on the housing. Insert all the way. You'll actually be able to feel a little resistance there, and you'll be on your spring-loaded locking mechanism. Rotate it down, and you can pull out your tumbler. Piece of cake. Transfer it over. Line up your little notch right there to that notch. Let her go. And there you go. So, new housing, got the bearing installed, 2 set screws, wiring harness, routing thingamajiggy, and a fully operational locking mechanism. Check that out. Alright. So, okay, let's put it all back together. Okay, here we are, reinstalled. Make sure you put the automatic selector cable back in there. Got the breakaway screws back in there. And don't forget to reconnect your electrics for your combination switch right here. And a little point that I'd like to put out, that I put some Loctite in here for these set screws, because you can tighten them, but if by chance from vibration they could come out. That's why you had that paint back in there in the from the factory. So I'd definitely consider putting that paint back in there, or Loctite, something like that, so they don't vibrate out. And also put the snap ring and the bushing back in there. Yeah, look at that, nice and tight. Should be ready to roll. Okay, so let's put the switches and steering wheel and everything back together. Here we go. The top cover is installed. The electrics along with the key ring are installed. And I highly suggest that you install and route your wiring with zip ties nice and neat, so there's no chafing when we put everything back together. Alright, here we go. Time for the steering wheel and finalize the project. Well, there we go. Steering wheel's reinstalled, airbags reinstalled. Don't forget to put those electrical connectors back on there for your horn and the center orange for your airbag. And the lower cover is installed. Highly suggest those final connectors you got down here for the airbag and your slip ring. Highly suggest you zip tie those together to something else down there so they're not chafing around or anything like that. And well, all I got is the knee bolster here to put back in, and the rest of the covers, and that'll be it for me. So before we do all that, let's give it a shot. Let's see how this thing works out. Key goes in nice and smooth. Accessory mode. We are on. Beautiful. Now that's what an M52 is supposed to sound like, baby. Purring like a kitten. Oh yeah, okay, let's shut her down and finish her up. Well, there she is. Old girl's ready to go. Ready to hit the streets. Okay, I want to thank God for giving me the special talents and abilities to, you know, do these complex tasks like this safely and effectively. And I want to also send out a special thanks to Steve at theultimategarage.com for expediting this original BMW part to me so I can fix old girl. And also even a special shout out to Ken Darling up in Norwich, New York, for teaching me almost everything there is to know about auto mechanics in my high school year. So that's it, and we'll catch you on my next project. Take care.